Like the meme generator here, where we haven't learned some of the things we need to know in order to complete it, I will break the app down as much as I can into pieces and then see. Which of those pieces I actually can create.
Export default apps. Alright, so JS export default. So here we have the apps.
For example, we've spent this entire course so far learning how to build static React sites. And The truth is there are static parts of this site. So the first one we're going to start with is the header. Remember, you can click this screenshot in order to go to the Figma design, which you can use to determine the font sizes, the spacing, this cool purple gradient here, and so forth. So let's start out with that, pause the screencast, and work on building the header component.
All right, so we have the meme. All right. Let's create here headers .js. So it is a display flex. This two in one div, and this is separate. So it's display flex, space between, padding. I would say how big is this? 65.
This app is probably small enough that it's not really necessary. I'll just do it for practice sake. I'll create a header.js file inside of my components folder, and I'll just spin up a basic.
Yeah, let's create a component. All right, I want to put headers in. Import
Basic React component here.
Yeah. Copy the same layout here. I don't need the logos. Import React from React. Right here we have the headers. Call this background. Headers, containers, and we have another div called this logos. Cannot be like that, so we do div class logo containers. Here we have the imgs. then what do we need is an H1. 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 Then we also need like a P. Let's say a P, right? Let's say an H3. 3. Copy this text. It's called meme generators. And then here it says React course project 3. Course. Project 3. Alright, so I need these pictures. Where can I get the pictures?
I'll do that little.
I can download this as zip. Export headers. Then we go into this, we do import headers from components / headers. And then we go here and we do headers / here. Let's try and run. Try and run this. Terminals. npm.start. Now cd my apps. My apps npm start. Yes. Okay, so there we go. We have an H1. Now I just want to upgrade this.
Sanity check that I like to do just to see that it's working on the page. In my app.js, I will import my header. Let's put everything here in a div since I know that I'll have multiple things here. Okay, my header component is showing up. Next, let's get the content on the screen. I know it's not just an H1, so I think I'll surround this whole thing with a header element. And I probably wouldn't call this an H1 because it's not really the main headline of the page. It's sort of in the header itself. So let's maybe call it an H2. Before that, I'm going to have an image. And I already know the source is going to be my image's troll face. And let's see,
I need to get the troll face. Let's download this as zip and then we export it out. Extract all. Right, we go into here, we go image. And let's get this image and put it onto our, that's it, meme generators, my apps, source, components, and we put it right here. Okay. Now we have the image here. What we need to do is src, same thing that he do, /images. Need to go into the image and then /throw face. Throw face. What is it? .png. .pngs. Let's try and rerun this. Doesn't work.
To be relative like this. That's probably going to be bigger than we want it to be, but
What? Trophies.png. Trophies.png. Copy the whole things. Why is it like that? Why I can... This one should cd out, right? /. Still doesn't work. Why I can't display images in React. Has to be wrapped inside app.js. When using Webpack, you need to require images in order. Right, so we need to wrap it in like curly braces. What about now? So require okay, try this. Images Let's move this back here so that it's easy. Dot slash, and then we do throw face png. There we go. So from Stack Overflow, so which code would explain why Excel image load while internal door? When using unique require image. Okay, got it. Call this headers.
But we'll fix that in just a minute. And last of all, we have this React course project 3. Can't really header. Usually grab my background, which is from the design, so I'm just going to paste it directly from the design there. On the top and bottom, we have header image, header title, and header project. So we'll start with the image. And we'll make sure that this fits within the boundaries of...
Right, let's do class name. Headers image. Go to here. What did he do? Basically copy all of this. Color. How to... Okay, so I need to copy this. Index.html, React app. Oh, it needs this so that color can run fonts, I mean. And then what we need to do. Okay, that's good. Header CSS, star box sizing. Border box, border something. What does it call? Starter CSS, box sizing, border box. Right. Display flex. Why is it not working? It's headers. The heck? It's already here. So now child one. So I don't think it allows more than, I don't think it's allowed two. I mean CSS file. Index.css. This is good. What do I need? React 3. Where's my others? Where's the H1? Meme generators. Color display flags. Align item centers. But then my H1 disappear. call this class name headers app title. This is header description. Let's do header image. Height 100 pixel.
Its parent by saying you have a max height of 100%. In the design, it looks like there's also some space, about 6 pixels, so I'll give this margin right of 6 pixels. The header title, it has a font size of about 20 pixels. And I can push my React Course Project 3 all the way to the right by giving my title a margin right of auto. We can see that a little more readily if I make this wider. Oh, and this still says header component. Let's update that.
Where's my stuff like this? Should be header display flags. Okay. Let's remove this. Okay, space between. I want this to space out, so column gaps? No, not really. Line item centers. Okay, so let's go put everything in the middle. But then this one should be in the diff, right? Yeah. So that this one would have a display flex as well. Display flex. Where's the logo? Add the description. Add the third child. And child 3 would have a column justified content. flex n. Oh, margin left auto. But now I should automatically space out. Margin right auto. That's weird. Right auto should be left. Margin left. What I can do is I say this right here. So header description. Okay. That's good. So that is the headers. Header project. Let's head the project. Yeah. So that is the description. Get this font size. Head is app title. Let's just say header title. So that is for easier. Title. Font size. We don't want a margin right anymore. And then what we can do is font size, font weight for this description. Right, let's see. That looking pretty neat, pretty nice. Okay, not too shabby.
So we'll leave that on there. And you know what? One thing I'm trying to get better at is using rems for my font size instead. 20 pixels over.
Yeah, let's do that so that it's going to be responsive. 0, 12 divided by 16. 12 divided by 16, that would be 0.75. 20. This is font size would be rem. Margin would be M. Margin padding would be M. Font size 20. This is 16, so 1.125. 20 divided by 16, 1.25. Rem. Okay, looking pretty neat, pretty nice.
Over 16 pixels equates to about 1.25 rem, and 12 pixels over 6. We can at least get them on the page. So let's do that in the next challenge. The next piece of our project that we can bite off is the form that we have right here with the 2 inputs and the button. So that's your challenge for this screencast. Don't worry at all about creating any functionality for it. I've outlined exactly the steps that I want you to do here. We're going to create a component called meme. Inside that meme component, we'll render a styled form, which will have our 2 inputs and our button. Pause the screencast and work on this challenge.
Alright, so now we do components, create new file, call this form. Form.js. Alright, so we go here, app, cancel, app CSS. Copy the same things here. Let's write it out. Import React from React. Okay, then what do we do? Function form, and we open parentheses, open code braces, return, and we do this. Alright, let's look exactly how it's supposed to look. Now let's do a div. I wish there's autofill for React, so that is going to be easier to develop. Autofill HTML tag in React. Open setting. VS Code setting.json. Let's go to, is it setting? Setting, and then we search open settings. Setting JSON. Create a vs.vs code /setting JSON file at the project. That's take a long time. Not going to do that. So now what we need to do is create a form. So what does this form need? 2 input field and 1 buttons. We want to wrap it in a div so that we can add padding, left, right, top, down, every of that. So we do here is called form containers. And then we do here 2 input field, input tag, first of all we need a type for those. This 2 will display flex, so it's flex out, and the button is going to be down below. Got it. So we do a div with a class name of inputs containers. Then we do put to this input inside here. First of all, we need a placeholders. Call it whatever. I don't really know what should I put here, but type text. Right. And then what do we need? We need to get the value, so what is it called? Type text. Oh, need two class name so that we can call it later on. Let's do IDs. Call this I don't know what do they do in order to get this? Is it like a shut up and get my somethings? This is just the design. Get a new image, new meme image. I don't really know what should I put here. Type here. Type your memes. And then type your memes. Whatever. And we need a buttons at the end. What is it called? Get a new image meme. Get a new meme image. Call this submit buttons. ID submit. Get btn. Right, we need to export default this. Export default form. Then we go into the app, do import form from / components / form. And then we do form here. Okay, let's see. Keywords.
So I'll create meme.js and set up my component. So in an effort to there inside, the grid will be the forms.
Ah, it's like a main tag. Okay, a form tag. But a form would be a lot like, yeah, let's try a form tag and the buttons inside of it. Interesting.
So I'll make that the grid container. I'll give this a class name of form. And while I'm here, I think I'll give these their own class names as well. I'm going to put these on their own lines. We'll say these are form inputs, and I'll give my button a class name.
I tried to write type text. Type equal text. Does it allow me to? Let's try. Okay, it's good, it's good. Okie dokie. pretty sure he would need to put that
form
in a
button.
div.
I guess I can also give my inputs some placeholder text, so we'll add
What should I put
top
there?
text.
Let's do class name. Class name. So that is easier to do. Let's do form input. Okay.
And bottom text.
I don't understand why it is need 2 input field instead of just 1, but maybe that is how it's supposed to work. Bottom text, so I just copy it.
It's a little more helpful. Now in our CSS, let's select our form, change it to display grid.
Oh, it's the display grid. I see. Form display grid. Let's see. Okay, so the first one is a two columns. Two columns. The first row is going to be 2 columns, and the second row would be 1 columns.
Grid.
Okay.
And then set up a grid template that has 2
grid template to what is it? Two display grid template.
40 pixel rows, and then evenly divide the columns with fraction units. So we'll have 2 columns, 1 FR each. Since I have 3 items,
template.
it's putting the first item filling up 1 column, the next item filling up the next column, and then the third item only filling up 1 column. The inputs look essentially the way that I want each. Since I have 3 items, it's putting the first item filling up 1 column, the next item filling up the next column, and then the third item only filling up 1 column. The inputs look essentially the way that I want them to, but I want the button to span the whole thing. So I'll select my form button a little bit. Then of course everything.
Okay, I need to go and see grid template. AA 40%, BBCC. So A is auto. To grid template row slash grid template columns. Okay, so the first row is going to be 40 40. 40 40 would be around 3M 3M divided by grid, and then what we get next is grid template columns. So each row is going to span 3M, so there's 2 rows, and then the columns is going to be what, like he said, it is 1 FR. So the first one is row, So there's two row each. Let's try and test it. Let's do 1M. Yep, the first one would be just 1M. So both of them are 3M. The row, each row, and then 1FR. So span across. What did he do to?
Thing is butting up against the edges of my page here.
Grid columns.
To spread things out a little bit. Then of course everything is butting up against the edges of my
margin. Let's do 1M. This is okay. And then we do a gap. 1M. Okay. What do I need next is the btn, the buttons. The form is going to get buttons. Let's do a class name for this as well. Class name get btn. What did he do? Grid columns. 1 divided by -1. I don't know how. What does that mean? Grid columns. CSS. Grid columns. So item 2 is this. 1, 2. Yellow is 2. So let's take up 2 space. 2 divided by 4. I don't know what is the divide. 1 divided by 4. Let's try that. -1. So this only work on the on the first one only. 2 divided by -1. No idea. I will need to learn about this. I learned it before, but it used to be really tricky.
My page here, I only am going to have one main element, so I'm just going to select the main element directly, and let's give it a padding, I think of about 36 pixels is what the design shows. One thing you might notice is that the placeholder text and the button text are not taking on our Carla font family. For whatever reason, inputs and buttons inside of forms tend not to do that, so I will specifically add that in my form button, and I will also select my form inputs, and I think I'll put this above. Add that in my form button or at the very end. Awesome. It looks like in the design there's a
I see there's a picture here. Let's try and copy that and put it into the design. Buttons. Okay. And then the colors is going to be the same one as this. Bodies, none. Okay, color, white. And then the font size is 16, 1M. Font weight is a little bit bold on the bold side. Font weight 700, that's good. How can I change the text holders? So I need to here input form, add a little bit of padding. No, let's say no, it's not a padding. Input type text. Alright, let's change this. Padding, let's do like a 4. Hundred pixel. So like a 5 pixel. That's a lot better. Let's do 10. Okay. Here's say like 20. Looks like it's 20. Pixel. Oh, that's top right. I'm sleepy today. Sleepy. Let's do like a 20. No, maybe a 10. 10 would be good. Alright.
A little bit of a gap. I can use the gap property to spread the and the button text are not taking on our Carla font family, and I will also select my form input.
Form input. Let's do font colors. Nope. Not input. Is the is this one. Okay.
And I think I'll put this above my form button since my inputs are above. As having a border radius of 5 pixels. My inputs have a border of 1 pixel solid, and then this color that I'm copying from the design. And oh, we need our hash mark there. There's a fun property called text indent that I learned about here. I can make it so that my placeholder text and my actual input text will.
So we can use that. We don't need this. But it's alright. It's alright. I would say, yeah, a little bit of finding, but it's alright. It's alright, guys. Now, what we need to do is do a border radius. Border radius, let's do 10 pixel. Let's see what happens. I think it's a little bit too curvy. This is say is 10, say is 5. 5 is a good numbers. Right. Alright. Do I need this as well? Yes, I do. But I don't want the border colors. Padding. Let's just do this. Right. Borders. 1 pixel. Solid. And paste in the colors. Is it 1 pixel? Border is 1 pixel. That's good. Looking pretty nice. Look like the design here. That's good.
We'll bump in a little bit or have a little bit of an indent. We'll just give it a 5 pixel indent. And I just noticed that these styles are not applying. That's because I need this to say form input, not form inputs. Okay, that's working now. Let me comment. I probably could separately of this application, including clicking the button and typing in our text. So in the next cast, we'll talk about what that will actually take. The primary thing that sets apart a static website like we've been building so far with web applications is the ability for the user to actually interact with our page. And in order for a user to interact with our page, we have to be listening for different events on that page and then reacting when those events happen. Let's get a quick overview as to how this app will work. As soon as the app loads for the very first time, it's immediately going to make a call to an API called ImageFlip, which will return to us an array of 100 meme images that are the most popular at that time. Then, clicking the Get a New Meme Image button will simply randomly choose one of those 100 images in the array that got returned to us. And as you've probably figured out, typing into the left input box will give us our top text, and typing into the right input box will give us our bottom text. Now, there's a lot in there that we need to break down before it becomes overwhelming. So let's start off really easy. The first thing we'll do is learn how to add an event listener to our button so that we can run some kind of logic when the button is clicked. And we'll start that in the next lesson. The primary thing that separates a static website from a web application is the ability for the user to interact with what they see on the screen. By now you should...
Give me a 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I need a bathroom break. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Right.
Should have built plenty of JavaScript applications that used events and event listeners to allow the user to interact with your application. So this topic shouldn't really be new to you. You should already be familiar probably with two different ways that in a vanilla JavaScript application you can add events to your program. First of all, there's the .add event listener, which you probably are already familiar with. If you were adding a click event, you would then provide a function, and inside this function you put the code of whatever should happen when the element that you're listening for an event on gets clicked. Alternatively, there's a way in HTML where you would essentially put on click and set that equal to the name of a function followed by parentheses. This second way is going to be much more similar to how we actually accomplish adding event listeners to items in React. For example, let's start with our button here. We're going to make it so that when we click the button, something will log to the console. In React, all I need to do is on my button, add an on click. And you'll notice that I used a capital C. And that's because we are accessing the DOM properties of the object that's being created here. As a reminder, what React is doing is it's taking this JSX element that it sees, which in the end returns a plain JavaScript object describing the DOM element that should be created by React. And whatever properties or attributes we add here inside the JSX are directly accessing the equivalent properties in JavaScript. If I were to select this button in JavaScript using document.getElementById or something like that, I would have a DOM element that has a property called onClick with a capital C. And this camel casing is the standard throughout all of our JavaScript elements. So all that means is that instead of using the lowercase c like you might be used to doing in HTML, we're going to have camel cased properties everywhere. So on click, maybe on mouse over, or on mouse enter, and so forth. Let me put this back to on click and we'll see the other difference here. Now, instead of setting this equal to a string, which has a function name, because I'm here in JavaScript, I can actually just use a set of curly braces and then put a function directly here inside of my onClick. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of stuffing my functions inside of my markup here if I can avoid it. So what I usually do is above my return, but still inside my component, I'll define another function up here and say handle click maybe, because this is the click event handler. Then I can say console log I was clicked. Let me get rid of this and I'm going to give you a mini challenge. Okay, pause the screencast and make it so that clicking the button.
Oh, that's easy. I'm going to repeat this. Okay, it's clicked. Wait, what? This one, right? I was clicked, but I haven't clicked it. On click. On click. React. Oh, it should not call this. Is it like this? Oh, it's click. Oh, it's click. Okay.
We'll run our handle click function.
Let's try. Assignment expression. Wait, what? Click me. Click me.
My handle click function. I don't want this set of parentheses here because that will run this function as soon as the program reads this line of code. Instead, I'm passing the function as a value so that React can add that function as the event handler in case a click ever happens on this button. So without the parentheses there, I can hit refresh, clean this up, I can hit click me, and then that's when our click event handler runs. The React documentation has a full list of all of the events that it supports. I've included here a screenshot that you can click from the React documentation. This will take you specifically to the mouse events. I've personally found that mouse events probably make up a good 95% of the events that I listen for in any program I write. And you'll probably need to use this as a guide for the challenge that we will do right now. Your challenge is to log something to the console whenever the mouse hovers over the image. I added some CSS to darken the image just so it was a little more obvious when the mouse was actually hovering over the image. Again, feel free to use this as your reference. Pause the screencast and work on this challenge.
All right. Now let's do function hover image. Now we do console.log hovered. Alright, so we do mouse mouse overs, right, on click, so it's click, and then mouse enters, mouse hover, mouse over, I think it's mouse over, React. On mouse over. On mouse over equal to hover image. Okay, click hover. That's good, guys. That's good.
And there's also on mouse over, which essentially does the same thing. It just has a slight difference dealing with children elements. Right now we don't have any on mouse. Say on mouse over equals, and then curly braces, because I'm going to put the name of our handle mouse over function. Pull these onto separate lines to make sure that we can see them well. Hit save. And now when I hover over the documentation, event listeners can be kind of fun, especially when there's a bunch that you may not have heard of. Just seeing how they work can be a fun thing to play with. Understanding this is going to be assumed from here on because you already should be a little bit familiar with events and event listeners at this point. Fortunately, doing it in React is actually fairly straightforward. And now this sets us up for one of the coolest parts of React, and we're going to jump into that next.
I love the enthusiasm of this instructors.
Let's apply what we just learned really about event listeners to our meme generator project. Ultimately, what we'll be doing is making an API call as soon as our component loads and getting data from an API that includes 100 of the most popular meme images right now, but we haven't quite yet learned everything we need in order to make that work. So for now, what I've done is I made the API requests and I just saved the data that came back here in memesdata.js. You can see we have the object, it's got a data property that has a memes property, and that is an array of 100 items. Each one of those items is an object that has a URL property. So you're going to have to do a little bit of digging into this memes data object, but your challenge is to make it so that when we click the button, it will randomly choose one of those URLs and just log it to the console. For now, don't worry about displaying the image yet. One modification I made to our markup here is I changed our form element into a div element. Long story short, when you have a button inside of a form, it actually submits that form and tends to refresh the page unless you stop it. But I realized that there's actually no reason for this to be collected together in a form because ultimately this button does its own thing by getting a new image. It does not take these inputs and submit them somewhere. So in this...
All right, I was thinking the same. It's going to be a hot mess if we do a form. So yeah, let's try this, and then go back into our dot form containers. Is it form containers? No, inputs containers. Inputs containers. Yeah, now we got the same things.
In this case, I feel like it's okay to have our inputs floating outside of a form, and that way it means that when we click our button, it doesn't refresh our page because it's not trying to submit a form. Okay, so the challenge is to get a random image from the memes data array, which I've already imported for you. You'll get that anytime this new meme image button is clicked. For now, just log the URL of that.
Log the URL. Okay. Get a random image from the meme data array when the new meme image button is clicked. So we do on click equal this, and we do handle click. All right, so now we go into this function handle click. Is going to run what essentially we need to go into the meme data console.log memes data. Right, we have a bunch of memes, and now what we need to do is randomize it. Right, get a random image from a meme array when the new meme image button is clicked. Log out the URL to the console, don't worry. So URL is going to be success. It's going to be URL. There we go. Now click. Meme data. Okay, we need to go into meme. So the first object is going into data, then go into meme, and then inside the meme we need to go into the meme array. We need to go into URL. So data memes, right? Data meme. How about now? Memes data. Yeah, I go into data now. Can I do dot success? True. Okay, what about dot datas? Right, now it works. Now we go into dot memes. Dot memes. Run. Right, now what we need to do is basically we got a random array. So now math.random, selecting like a random array of the meme, and then .url. Let's try 1. Let's do 0 and then .url. Run. I got this. Go math.random math.floor.math.random. Get a random image. Math.random. And then math.floor. Wrap the whole things. And define. What you need to do is get a random numbers. Math.floor. Math.random. Time it by the max. Let's try this. Close it with parentheses. How many array, how many stuff that we have here? Let's do 20. So we got 1, 2. Oh, time it by day memes.length. All right. Let's try that. Time it by meme dot length. Alright, how about I do console log? So there's 100. I'm pretty sure this is right. I just don't know where should we put this. It's going to random, so time it by, and then we floor it so that it's gonna be a whole numbers. So selecting a whole numbers from 0 to 99, isn't it? 99 or 1? 99 or 100? I think 100, right? Exclusive, so 99. So it should be +1. Yeah, I think so.
New image to the console. Oh, I'll just have it console log object. There's the object. It has I can use math.floor, math.random, time.
Okay. So I need to do const random int equal math.floor.random memes. That's console.log random int. Why is it not working? Math.floor.random.
The length of my array, so that's memes array.
Okay. I also need a memes array. is equal to this. Meme array. It's console.log, so it's 9. Give me a 51. Okay. So now what we need to do is console.log this meme arrays plus a random numbers, random int, and then the URL. Okay. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go.
Dot length. This random number should get me a random index of my memes array, and that indexed item will be an object with a URL property. So let's actually just console log random number and see how we're doing so far. 16, 50, 92. Okay, I wanted to see a high number to make sure that it was going up to 100. I probably don't need to click this until I see 100, or actually I think it would be 99. So I can get my image object, or actually I can just do it all in one. I'll say const URL equals, and then I'll index into memes array at the index of random number. This is my object with a URL property. So I'll just save that as URL so it's nice and short. Or if we wanted to do some object destructuring, I could just say, get me the URL property from this memes array. I don't want to conflate a few things here, so I'll just keep it straightforward like this. And then we'll just console log the URL. Of course, I could do probably most of this in a single line, but I find that sometimes separating it out makes it a lot easier for other people to read.
True.
Let's save. And I guess I have no way to ensure that these are in the correct index, but I can't see why they wouldn't be. So this is awesome. We're getting random images every time we click our button. At this point, we are a little bit blocked, and I'll show you why. If I create, let's say, a paragraph down here, and I try to stick my URL in there, well, first of all, I have a problem because my URL is only declared inside of this function. And so this is not going to know what I'm talking about. If I hit refresh, it's going to say it doesn't know what URL is, essentially. So you might think, well, let's declare URL outside of the function. You could say let URL, and then just set URL equal to this and console log URL. Let me hit save, and now at least URL is, well, of course my styling is all messed up because my paragraph is, let's put this outside here so we have that above. Click new meme image. Okay, well, we set URL equal to the new meme image right here. However, my UI did not update. This has everything to do with the way that React looks at variables and decides when it should update the UI or the user interface. And spoiler alert, it doesn't do that by just looking at every variable that we declare inside of our component. In the next cast, we're going to dive a little deeper into this conundrum that we have and start figuring out how we can make it so that we can update a variable that will then replace what we have on the screen with the new value of that variable. At this point in our journey, we have mostly been dealing with static websites. In the previous section, we showed how we can take data that we pull from, for example, an API. We were just using a little JavaScript local data file to mimic pulling from an API, and then we mapped over that array of data to display items on the screen. However, in order to interact with those items on the screen, we are still missing something. I want to demonstrate what I mean, but before we do that, just in case it's been a little while, let's get our hands in the keyboard with a quick challenge. I have here just a locally defined array with two strings in it, thing1 and thing2. I want you to map over the things array, generate a paragraph element for every item in the array, and then render those items below the button right here. This challenge harkens back to the last section where we learned about .map and how to take an array of data and turn it into elements on the page. So pause the screencast and work on this challenge.
Alright, so map over the things array. Let's do this .map, and then what we need is things. think it's supposed to be this, right? Map over the thing array to generate a P element for each item. And render them out onto the page. Things 1, thing 2, okay, we do insert things here. P and then /p. Try this. So I still don't know. Can I return things? Let's do div class name. This call this class name equal call this things holders /div. Okay. Const. Can I do like a vanilla JavaScript? So we do things holders equal document.getElement by class name. Right, things holders, and then we do things holders dot inner HTML. Plus equal, it's going to be this, p tag, and then we do things thing, and then we do /p. Try it. Why is it not working? Console doesn't say anything. Text content doesn't say.
Things array, which is just a string, and we'll return a JSX wrapped.
Oh, just return the whole things. P
version of that string, so really just a paragraph element in JSX, where what we insert on the inside is the text of that thing. Thing is just a string, so it's fine if I just put it inside of my paragraph like that. Then things elements is an array of paragraph elements, and I can just put that inside my curly braces here, hit refresh.
cons things loop equal interesting. Let's do like each child in a list should have a unique key props. Check the
And now I have
renders.
thing 1 and thing 2. I did get that warning about key, so I should probably just add a key prop here, and every one of these strings will be unique. We'll see why in just a second. So I'm just going to say that thing is the key, and that should set them apart and get rid of my warning there. Cool. Well, this is great. But
so it needs a key equal things. Oh,
but we've got this button that doesn't currently do anything. Let me set up another quick challenge for you. The concept is going to be that you click the add item button and it adds another thing to our things array, namely thing 3, and then you click it again, it'll be thing 4 and so forth. I'll type up this challenge now. Okay, your challenge is to add an event listener to our button so that when it gets clicked, it adds another thing to our things array. In your event listener, you can use thingsArray.length plus 1 to determine what number should get added to the next item in this array. And it also will be a good idea to make sure that at the very end of that event listener that runs when you click the button, that you console log your things array. And the reason is because, spoiler, the page is not going to update when you add new things to the array. I decided it would be important to let you know this little fact ahead of time so that you weren't pulling your hair out trying to figure out why the heck things weren't changing on the page. So pause the screencast and work on this challenge.
Add a event listener to the button so that when it clicked, on click equal this, and then we do handle click. I like handle click the most. It is nice, easy to understand. It's array plus 1. Dot lang plus 1. So we do things array dot lang plus 1. New things equal things array dot lang plus 1. Okay, so we do console.log new things. Error known. Add an event listener, so when it's clicked, it's add another things to the array. Use the array line to determine the numbers of things being added. Two, two, two. 1, 2. 2 is 3 plus equal. How do I do this? Plus plus dot length. Okay, that's good.
They add up there. They JavaScript. Of course, I'm going to log the things array after I push the new item. Let me open the console so we can see that a little more clearly. I'll hit save. Add item. Okay. Oh, not a number, of course, because I spelled length wrong. Let's try that again. Add item, thing 3, thing 4, thing 5. Great. Well, our array is changing, but of course what we see on the screen is not. And this brings us to our conundrum. At this point, React is not looking at local arrays that are just saved within a component to determine whether or not something should get re-rendered, or rather if the return here should run again with an updated value for things elements. Actually, maybe more specifically, I'm determining my things elements way up here at the top, back when things array is just 2 items long, and then it's sort of cementing this things elements into its memory, and no matter what I do to change things array, it's not going to automatically change things elements. In my early days, I thought maybe if I put this below add item or something like that, it might make a difference, but that's not going to change the fact that this line of code will only run one time, and that's the very first time the app component gets rendered right here. Let me clean this up real quick. Now, one thing that might be tempting to do is inside of our add item function to say, well, let's not just update our array, let's actually select the elements on the screen using document.getElementById and finding out where the container for these items is, and then pushing a new paragraph element to that list. And the truth is, when you're just using plain JavaScript, that's essentially what you have to do. But if you think back to one of our earlier sections, we talked about how React is declarative. And this is one of the major benefits of having a declarative library like React. It makes it so that all we really need to do is update our data, and React will automatically, react to that change and update our UI to display what has changed in the data. All we need to be in charge of is making sure that the data updates correctly, and React will handle the rest. However, for that to work, we need to access something called React State. And state will allow us to sort of hook into the component and make it so that whenever we update our state, which is really just values that we're saving inside of this component, it makes it so React will update the user interface based on any changes that happen to those values that are being saved in state. And truthfully, if you think of pretty much any website that you interact with, if it were made in React, any kind of interaction you had would change the state. The first thing that comes to mind is maybe, I don't know, a playlist or a recipe where you hit the little heart icon or maybe a bookmark icon, and it fills it in and likely sends a message out to a database that updates the fact that you have liked a recipe or a song. Or maybe it's an accordion or a carousel where you click something and an image shifts over or a portion of the page expands so you can read more information. Any of those interactions in React are going to be updating state, which then makes it so that React can update the user interface to respond to however you interacted with the page. So now let me update this using state, and you can see how it will actually start to work again the way we originally expected. Obviously, at this point, some of this will look a little bit foreign, and that's totally okay. We're going to dive deep into understanding how to actually write this ourselves, but you can see that not that much changed in my actual code, but suddenly I have an app that's working the way that I expected. The example is a little bit contrived, obviously, but hopefully you can see the exciting world of state in React that we're approaching and start to imagine some of the cool things that it's going to allow us to do. So buckle up and get ready to jump into React State. One thing I've learned over my years of teaching React is that one of the major points of confusion for students when they're first learning React is understanding the difference between props, which you have already learned, and state, which we are about to learn. So let's take some time and clarify the differences between the two and when you would want to use one over the other. And the first thing we'll do is look at props. We've seen how we can implement props in practice, but let's take a second to actually talk about them. When we refer to props, we are referring to the properties that we are passing into a component in order for that component to work correctly. This is similar to how a function can receive parameters, quote unquote, from above. Just like a function that receives parameters, a component that receives props is not allowed to modify those props, or in other words, those props are called immutable. Let's first take a look at a regular function. Let's say I define a function that says add two numbers, and I pass in my parameters of a and b. As I'm writing the logic of this function, I'm going to assume that this function will be passed a and b. Of course, I could always do some kind of check that says if there's no such thing as a, or if a is equal to undefined, then throw some kind of error that says you need to provide both a and b. But other than that, inside of the body of the function, I can just assume that I have a variable a, which is a parameter that has been passed to this function, and I can assume that I have a parameter b, another parameter passed to this function. And that's what I mean by being passed from above. When we actually use this function, we'll say add two numbers. I'll provide my actual values that I want to represent the parameters a and b, and my function can then do its job. The main point that I want to come across here, however, is that inside the body of this function, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for me to modify or mutate these parameters. For example, I wouldn't want to say, forget what you just gave me for a, I'm going to set it equal to 42. Naturally, this should feel wrong to you because essentially we're ignoring anything that is passed in as the first parameter here and just setting it equal to 42. Technically, this probably works. If I were to console log the result from add two numbers, 1 and 2, of course I would expect it to be 3, but we'll see that it's actually 44, and that's because we've overwritten a to be something different. Similarly, in React, I would never want to have a component, let's say a navbar, that takes props, but then automatically sets props dot, I don't know, let's say cover image equal to something else. This is a huge red flag. You would never want to set props.anything or props itself equal to anything different because incoming props should be immutable and they should never change manually. Or maybe more specifically, those props should never change from within the body of our component itself. Now, that's not to say that when I have an instance of my navbar that I can't provide a cover image that changes. Let's say it starts out as some image 1, and then, I don't know, maybe there's a button on the screen. When the user clicks that button, I want my navbar's cover image to update to some other image. Maybe this is a little convoluted because I'm not really using images here. But the point is, I can change the values that I pass to my component. That's fine. That's something I'm allowed to do, and as we jump into state, we're going to see why that's even useful. But from within the body of the function, I should never ever change my props, in the same way that I would never want to change the parameters being passed to my function. Another way to think about props, here we read that they are the properties being passed into a component in order for it to work correctly. If it helps, you could think of it as the properties being passed to a component in order to configure it. As we saw in our last section project, we passed props to our card component in order for that card to be reusable and configure it to display the correct image, the correct price, the correct stats like the review count and so forth. And oftentimes you'll find components that do more than just take in the data that should just be displayed as a part of the component. Sometimes they will receive configuration objects or properties. Let's say, for example, off the top of my head, if we had a component that we wanted to display either in light mode or dark mode, well, then maybe I would have a dark mode property that I could set to true. In this case, I'm not necessarily displaying the literal text true for dark mode or the text dark mode is activated or anything like that, but instead this is a property that is configuring my navbar in order for it to act and display correctly. Okay, I might be beating a dead horse here. So let's move on, and we're going to see how the use of state will differ from our usage of props.
Interesting.
If props are data that a component is receiving from above and shouldn't be changing, state, on the other hand, are values that are defined within a component and essentially should be changing. So as we see here, state refers to any values that are managed by the component itself, kind of like a function that declares its own variables from within that function. Long story short, anytime your component has changing values that should be saved and displayed, you're most likely going to be using state. We'll jump into what this looks like in React in a second, but I think it might be helpful to see how this compares in a vanilla JavaScript example, kind of like we did with our add to numbers and having what we can equate to props being passed in as these parameters, and how we shouldn't be changing them from within the definition of this function itself. In order to create an equivalent in vanilla JavaScript of our concept of state, let me write out a challenge for you. Let's say we have a function called greeting. It takes a name as a parameter, and what it should return is a string like good afternoon and then followed by the name. Of course, afternoon will change depending on the current time of day, as you can read from the challenge description up there. At this point, this is more of a vanilla JavaScript algorithm challenge for you, but I think it's good to incorporate those into our React course here. And maybe just so that I'm not making you chase Google a whole bunch right now, I'm going to give you a couple hints here. So you can get the current time of day by following these two lines of code. Essentially, first you create a new date object in JavaScript, and then you use that date to get the current number of hours. These hours are 0 index, so 12 a.m. is 0, 11 p.m. is 23. And just to be clear, I have included the 11:59, 4:59, and everything up here just to be clear what hours should be included in morning. This one's kind of funny because I don't know that I would ever say goodnight to someone at 3:59 a.m., but whatever. My point is you won't need to get the minutes here. You can just use the hours like I've shown you here. Pause the screencast, see if you can complete this challenge, and then we're going to bring the concepts back into understanding state in React.
Right, so greet names. Let's do a cons. This should be like a global. Is it global? Greet names. Date and time should be global. So get date and time. Run this console.log hours. It's 14 right now. Right. If hours, right, complete the function below, given a name, return good, depends on, okay, if hours from 4 till 12, so smaller than 12, and larger than 4. Right, so anything between 4 and 12 is going to be and then return it. I want a let time equal is an empty string at the moment, and time update is equal this, and let's try and see console and then return else if from 12 to this is would be Let's return if it's currently one greeting. Alright, return this. String constraint. And unterminate string literal. What the hell? They need hashtag. Now, what is wrong with this? What is wrong with this? Why is it not? Oh, I need to return. Good. And then this, and then that. Then we do comments here, name, so it's not returning anything. Else if copy the same things. Yep, let's do 12. So 12 to 5, and then 5 till 8, and then else if, and then else something else. It should be 12 to 17. 17 till 8 is 20. Why it doesn't return anything? Morning, Bobs. Afternoon. Morning. Why is it good morning? Is 14 right now, 14. So 12 to 14, time of the day. Why is it like this?
About the logic of this, it's 12 p.m. my time, so my answer should
Maybe this has to go in here. Still good morning.
should say 12 there. Yep. And then depending on the current number of hours, I will change the string time of day to be either morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Just
oh, so it should. This has an N. Got it.
like I talked about in the challenge. And now that I have a time of day value, I can simply return the string.
Okay, got it, got it. So it's larger than equal to and smaller than 20. Got it.
And I'll use some interpolation here. We'll say good, and then we'll stick in the time of day, comma, and then I'll use the value for name that I'm receiving as the parameter to greeting, exclamation point, and let's go ahead and see if this works. Again, it's about 12 o'clock my time, so I should, when I'll need to console log this, the value that gets returned. Good afternoon, Bob. Okay, Now, the point here is my function is receiving a parameter. This parameter is not something that I will want to change in the way of saying name equals something different, because that would just be a kind of a strange thing to do when you are expecting the outside user of this function to provide you the name. Similarly, in React, we are not going to take any props and then just change them, which is what we talked about in the last screencast. However, there are definitely reasons for us to, within our own function, create values that we can either use or even change, like our let time of day here. In React, values that are created by the function or the component itself are usually handled with state. Okay, I think that's more than enough of the conceptual difference between props and state. At this point, it's probably best for us to just get our hands dirty and start actually seeing how we can implement state in React. And then as we build our section project, we will get much better exposure into how state and props will work together and how they are different from each other as well. It's time for another quiz. This one's going to specifically be looking at the difference between props and state. So as always, read through these questions, click into the editor, type down your answers, and when you're satisfied with your answers, click play and we'll go through the quiz together.
Right, how would you describe concept of state is... So first of all, what state is, it has to be, it will be changed first of all. State mutable. Should I call datas? Let's just call datas, right? And it will dynamically change, depends on the prompt. State also is what what else? I don't know. Let's just move on instead of state. When would you when you know the data will not be changed. So this one is, yeah, explainable, right?
United States to do with that. Render cycles. This will make more sense when we get into the syntax of it, but let me type down a more concise answer to this question.
A way for React to remember saved value from within a component. This is similar to declaring variable from in a component.
The concept of state is essentially a way for React to it, which we're going to get to later. So when would you use props instead of state in React? I think the easiest way to think about this is to compare it to regular JavaScript functions. Props are like passing parameters into a function that the function then uses to help it determine the output, what gets returned. So in React, you would want to use props anytime you need to pass data into a component so that that component can use that data to determine what should get displayed on the screen. In some cases, the data that we pass in will directly be data that is displayed, like in the instance of text. But sometimes it will be data that's really just meant to, so to speak, configure the component. so that the component can use it to determine how something gets displayed. Okay, so when would you want to use state instead of props? Continuing with our function analogy, state is kind of like when inside of the body of a function you declare new variables, and you use those new variables to help you accomplish some task inside of the function. In React, you would use state anytime you needed a component to maintain its own values. As we mentioned earlier, it's slightly different than just declaring a regular variable. We're going to see the syntax of it later and how it differs, but for now that should be a sufficient answer to this question. So you would use state anytime you want a component to maintain some values from within that component, and by the way, also remember those values even when React needs to re-render the component. Again, we're going to see that much more in detail a little bit later. And a little bit out of left field, what does the term immutable mean? And then are props immutable and is state immutable? Immutable technically means unchanging. The reason I bring this up is because we learned that props are immutable. We should not ever change props from within the component that's receiving props. Doing so essentially defeats the entire purpose of props. Think of it like a function that receives a parameter but then just decides to change the value of those parameters to something different. It pretty much invalidates the whole purpose of passing parameters into a function. So props are immutable. In this case, I don't think props are literally immutable. You can try to set them equal to something else, and I don't believe it will crash your program, although it may throw a warning. But maybe a better way to describe it is saying that you should not change props, and therefore they are immutable. State, on the other hand, is not immutable, or in other words, nice work. When you're ready, let's keep moving forward. We saw in an earlier lesson how it's not going to work for us, at least in React, to just declare regular variables like, let's say, state is equal to yes, and expect React to re-render our component if for some reason that state ever changed. If you recall, we had an array of items, and we had a button that allowed us to push new elements to that array, but whenever we did that, it didn't actually update our page. And that's because React doesn't watch for local variable changes. So the first thing we'll do is learn how to actually declare state inside of our component, and in the next cast, we'll talk more about how to actually change that state. As a part of the React library, there is a method called useState. And useState is one of many what are called hooks in React. There's a little bit of history as to why it's called hooks. We're probably just not going to worry too much about it right now. But the point is I can declare some state by simply calling react.useState. Now, another way you might oftentimes see this is people will destructure it directly in the import statement. They'll grab the useState method from React as well, and then they can just use useState. In fact, I would suppose this is the more common way you will usually see it happen. However, just for perfect clarity and for it to be very clear that useState is part of the React library, I'm actually going to use react.useState because I do find that it makes it a lot more clear where this useState method is coming from. Let's go ahead and see what comes back. We'll say const result equals react.useState, and then we'll console log result, just to see what actually comes back by calling react.useState. I'll open the console, hit save, and look at that. Okay, so that's interesting. We get an array back, and the array has its first value as undefined and its second value, well, in Scrimba it says f parentheses. That just means that it's a function. Now, let's see what happens when I put something inside the parentheses. Let's say the string hello. I'll hit save, and now the first value of my array is the string hello. So whatever I put inside of my parentheses when I'm calling useState is going to be the default value for the state variable that I want to save. Okay, so now that leads me to a little mini challenge that will require you to think a little bit critically. I'm going to type the challenge out now. Okay, your job is to replace this yes with a string yes that isn't just hard-coded inside, but rather is created by using react.useState. Remember, what we get back by calling react.useState is not just the string hello, it's actually an array. So let that guide you as you work this challenge. Pause the screencast and work on this now.
useState hello is a console log. useState hello. So it's going to pass in a function. Can I do? Yes. Let's do actually console.log. Replace our hard code some state initial with React use state. Yes. Let's hard code this instead, and we do result. Function are not valid as a React child. This may happen if you return a component set up components. It's an array, and this is the second part. An array let's do 0. Yes. Yes. I think that's how I understand it.
Let me say result at the index of 0. I'll hit save, and we get yes the exact same way we had it before. But now if I were to change this to no, which is not true, state is important to know. Awesome, our page actually updates with the exact yes way we had at the index of 0 page and change state themselves. So when you're ready, let's jump into those topics.
Array destructuring.
As we saw, what we get back by calling react.useState is an array where the first item is the value of the state that we are hoping to save, kind of like initializing a variable inside of our component. And the second item of that array is a function. So we saw how we could use result at the index of 0 to get our value. However, there's actually a much smoother way to deal with this. And this requires us to use array destructuring. Since react.useState returns an array, what we can do is actually destructure that array immediately upon receiving it as a variable, and then we can provide two values, and let me just put func because we know the second value is a function. Now in this case, if I rerun console.log result, what we see is that we have pulled out the first item in the resulting array of react.useState and destructured it into its own variable called result. What's nice about using array destructuring is that we get to call this whatever we want. If this were object destructuring, we would have to use the property name of the object that comes back by calling react.useState. But because they return an array, we can call it whatever we want. So if I console log whatever we want, we get the same thing, yes. Oh, and now my result down here is broken, so if I change that to whatever we want, we get back to the way we were. Now, don't use silly names like whatever we want. Instead, let's say maybe is important. We'll choose a variable name that makes a lot of sense for what the value is that we're trying to keep track of. And that's the concept of using array destructuring in order to more smoothly get values from React.useState. In the next screencast, let's talk more about this function here.
Yeah, that is the main part of it.
Let's take a look now at the function that we receive here when we destructure the array that comes back from React.useState. Normally, if we had a variable where we were saving this, if we just said something like let is important equal yes, then we already know we could simply say is important equals something different, like no. However, when we're working with state, we can't simply say is important equals something different. Instead, we are given a function that allows us to make these changes so that React can handle those changes accordingly. Let me delete these lines here, and let's take a look at this function. Now, normally we wouldn't just call this func, so let's give this a more meaningful name. The convention that you'll oftentimes see is set, and then the rest of the variable that we called our state. So set is important. In this case, I need a capital I to make my camel casing correct.
Set
and this
important.
set is important is a function that I can run, and whatever value I provide to it is going to be the new version of state. Now, of course, running this function immediately after generating state is kind of silly. In fact, I'm not even certain that it would work. Instead, we would normally want to set or change the state whenever something specific happens on the page. So let me type up a challenge so we can do something like that. Okay, just to avoid confusion, I created the actual function body for you, but your challenge is to have this function run this line of code, and then to set up an event listener on this div so that it runs handle click whenever anywhere inside the circle gets clicked.
Right, on click. Is equal to handle click. Alright, create a function called handle click that run set important to no. At the what the hell?
Pause the screencast and work on it. And then I need to set up an event listener here. So I'll say on click, again, capital C. We will run our handle click function.
Yeah, I did the same things. Now it works. What?
Refresh. And when I click my button here, awesome, gets clicked.
Okay.
Gets clicked. Pause the screencast and work on this challenge. Most simple way possible. Well, nothing is changing, and that's because every time I click it, it immediately sets it to no. In the next screencast, let's work on a challenge that will help get your hands on the keyboard practicing using state.
Oi, oi, oi. There we go.
All right, here we have something that's a little more dynamic. The idea is we will create a little counter. When I hit plus, this number should go up. When I hit minus, this number should go down. To start us off and to get your hands on the keyboard, I'm going to have you complete this challenge where you're going to set up state to track our current count. And our initial value is going to be 0. Pause the screencast and see if you can complete this challenge.
Let's try this. const array destructuring is going to be count, and then a set count, and then we have a react.useState. I'm assuming, I think this is supposed to be 0. Alright, let's console.log count 0. So a function on click called as increment. Let's just save this, go back to our last.
Here, so I'll say on.
And click.
All right, here we have something that's a little to set up state.
Wait, I thought I saved it. Okay, let's do it. So we got const. This is a object array destructuring. So we do count and then set count equal useState react.useState, and then we do this, do 0, and then here we have a on click increment. So we have a function called increment. What do is going to set count plus. What? Set is important. Handle click and did the same things. Come on. You have to save it. Let's just say handle. Handle. Ah. Zero plus plus. Handle minus click. 0 minus minus. Why is it?
To track our current count. And our initial value is going to be initial value of 0. And then
So
we
many
need to
syntax.
essentially catch what this returns in some variables. I'll call the count that I didn't specifically say to do and wouldn't be very obvious unless I did, is to use this count value to replace our 0 here. Now, at this point, nothing is going to look like it has changed. I still...
Yeah, did the same things. Let's do to 100. Here's count. What? Do the same things, not happening. Set up state to track. What is this? I did the same thing as him.
For now,
let's do 100. Now it's set to 100, but when I do this, nothing happened. Count. Let's try and move this.
part of the challenge.
Okay, now let's do on click. And then we do handle minus click. Let me grab some water. Can do function. Can I do this? It's a function. Console.log. Hello. Okay, that's good. We do set count equal to count minus error unknown. Cannot do that. 100. Let's do 99. It works, but then it's not that responsive. I cannot do minus. 100 minus. Cannot do that. Minus 100. Left hand side prefix operation. No ideas. Let's see.
And for now, we'll just console log add. And let's see, here is my plus button. So I will add an on click of add. And now I should click this button and get my console logging add. Awesome. Okay, at this point, we're running into an issue, and that is how we can update our count. What we most recently saw is that I could say set count and then provide some kind of immediate hard-coded value here. However, that doesn't really help us because even if I provide a 1, if I run this code, it will work. Notice that when I click the add button, it sets the count to 1. Therefore, it re-renders our app and changes the 0 to 1. However, of course, if I hit plus again and again and again, it's just constantly setting it to 1, and it doesn't really accomplish what we want. So I want you to think critically. I'm going to update our challenge. I want you to see if you can think of a way so that clicking the plus button will increase our number by 1 every time and display it correctly on the screen. Obviously, hard coding a 1 here is not going to work.
What if I do count minus? Increment in React. You can do count plus. Count plus 1. Minus 1. So it remembers. It's not like JavaScript where it's reset it back to the initial. Okay. And then we do the same things. Handle here, we do plus and plus set count plus 1. Okay.
Pause. That is this. Count plus plus is a shorthand for count equals count plus 1. And in this case, using count equals is just a big no-no. You will never ever do that when you're modifying state. The entire reason that we have this set count function is so that we can simply provide a new updated value, but we will never ever want to run an equal sign after our state value. So let me put this back to count plus 1. We'll see that this is working. And now I want to update our value here. So in the next screencast, we're going to see another way that we can use the setCountSetter function to update our state value. Although currently it's technically working for us to use our current state value in order to determine the new state value when we're setting our count, it turns out there's actually a better way to use setCount in this case whenever we need to use our old version of state to determine our new version of state. We've seen how we can simply provide a new value to our setter function. However, there's another way that we can use this setter function, and that is to provide a callback function inside. When we provide a callback function as the parameter to our setter function, this function needs to return the new value that we want state to be. If we essentially wanted to recreate what we did by passing a simple value to our setCount function, we could just have our callback function here return count plus 1. However, this is where the best practices comes in. Anytime we need to use our old state value to determine a new state value, if we provide this function, React will pass this function the old value as the parameter here. What we can do is then take this old value and use that as our reference to what count was at the time that this function was called. This might be really confusing at this point. It would require us to jump a little bit deeper into how React handles state changes and re-renders to truly understand why this is best practice. For now, I think it's going to be enough to simply say if you ever need to use the old value of state in order to determine the new value of state, you should just always plan to pass a function to setCount. This might be a little disheartening because this already looks way more complicated than what we had here. Fortunately, if we use arrow functions, we can simplify this quite a bit. I can just say, given the old value, return old value plus 1. Usually what I'll do is use the prefix of prev and then use my state value. So I'll say prev count as in previous count. So this is the convention you'll usually see me using whenever I'm using a callback function as my parameter to set count. Because that was a little bit confusing, I'm going to type this out as a note so that maybe those of you who are more visual learners will be able to comprehend it a little better. So again, if you ever need the old value of state to help you determine the new value of state, or in other words, if the new value of state depends on knowing what the old value of state was, you should always pass a callback function to your state setter function instead of using the state directly like we're doing down here. Then this callback function will receive a previous...
Alright, so is it the same thing? It is. Okay.
Version or the old version of the state value, which you can then use to determine the new state value. With that said, let's do a quick challenge. Okay, your challenge is to update our subtract function to use this callback function as the state setter instead of what we currently have.
Also the same things, just prev -1. Yep, it's good.
Pause the screencast and update our subtract function. Watch this, you can see everything is working exactly the way as it was. You're obviously more than welcome, if you're really curious, to deep dive into this, do a bunch of Google and YouTube searches to truly understand why this is better. Frankly, I would say probably 90% of the time you would never notice a difference between what we used to have and what we currently have. However, it is generally accepted as best practice to do it this way. And all of this is not to say that there's no instance in which you would want to just provide a bare value for your setter. That certainly does happen still, but in the spirit of teaching you best practices in React, it's probably good enough just to understand what I'm talking about here in this note and to move on. A good practice at this time might be to delete everything that we're doing dealing with state here and to try and recreate it from scratch, maybe as a way to test your own skills to see if you are truly comprehending what we've done so far. When you feel like you've got a good grasp on this, let's keep moving forward. Let's pause now and do another quick quiz. Like you've done before, pause the screencast, click into the editor here, actually type down your answers to the questions that you see here, and then we will go through the quiz together. Pause now and work on the quiz.
You have two options for what you can pass into a state static function. What are they? So the first is the value, and then the second one is a function. When would you want to pass the first option from answerable to the state status? When it need to be called? I don't understand this question.
Value like 42. Whenever this function gets called, state will automatically be updated to the number 42. And option B is to pass a callback function, and then whatever the callback function returns, we'll say whatever the callback function returns will be the new value of state. And then numbers 2 and 3 both refer back to the answer to number 1. So when would you want to use the first option? In our case, the new value of state. This is any time you want to update your state and you do not care what the previous value of state was, or rather you don't need the previous value of state to help you determine what the new value of state should be. And then the answer to number 3 is basically the opposite of number 2. It's whenever you do need the previous value of state to help you determine the new value of state. Under the hood, React is doing some relatively complex things to make sure that it can maintain state for you. One of those things has to do with batching a bunch of different state changes together. So if you were to run 2 state setter functions back to back, the way that React handles it may or may not run one of them before the other. That's a very high-level overview of why we need to do this, but when we pass a callback function to our state setter function, we can be guaranteed that the value that callback function receives, which in the previous lesson we were calling prev count, we can be guaranteed that it will receive the most updated correct version of that so that it can update state correctly. If that didn't make any sense, that's completely okay. That's really why I didn't want to dive too deep into it, because at this point it truly is enough to know that if you need the old value of state to help you determine the new value of state, you should pass a callback function. Otherwise, you don't need to pass a callback function. Okay, I'm probably beating a dead horse at this point. When you're ready, let's keep moving forward. Now that we've learned how to create and update our state, let's revisit our meme generator. We figured out earlier how to get a random URL for a meme image. However, the conundrum we ran into was that we couldn't update our user interface with that image because React wasn't listening to our local variables. Now that we know about state, we should be able to add an image to our meme generator. So your challenge is to first create a new piece of state called meme image that will just start with an empty string as a default. And when the getMemeImage function is called, you'll save the random URL, which we still have access to right here, in the state for meme image. Once you've done that, you should be able to add an image element below our div here with the form that has its source set to the new meme image state that you created. As a bonus, you may want to add some styling so that the image stays confined within the space that we're working with here. Pause the screencast and work on adding an image to our meme generator.
Alright, save the random meme URL and state. Create a new state called meme image with an empty string. Create new state const. Call this set meme image, and then equal react dot use state. React use state. Copy this. Let's try and console block meme image. Maybe I need to put it inside this. Cross origin was thrown. I don't see any cross origin was thrown. Meme. Cons URL. Random numbers. Try console.log URL. Alright, that's good. And then I want a const that is going to take in value of meme img and a set meme image equal react dot use state of URL. Why is it not working? It's not working. Buttons. Get meme image. And the get image function is called update the meme image state to be the random chosen image URL. So on the empty string, cons count, set count. Why is it not working? Dot use state. Meme image. Create a new state called meme image with an empty string as default. State. Console.log meme. Okay, so it's an empty string. I need URL in here. Why is it like this? Below the div, add an image. Set the source to the meme src equal yes, act should be either an expression. Why I cannot do this? That's weird. That's weird. Weird. Below the div form and set the source to new image, meme image. I should have the yes.
Meme image and set the string. The answer is no. I don't. In my get meme image function, we can call set meme image. And now think for a second, do I need access to the old state, the old string here, in order?
Set meme image is equal to URL. You dirty bastard. What if I go in here? You mother trucker.
In order to determine what my new string should be. And the answer is no. I don't care what it used to be. I'm completely replacing it with the new URL, which I can get through memes array at the index of random number.url. And that should complete these first two tasks. Lastly, I'm going to use my new meme image to create an image. Go ahead and just see what happens. I'll give it the proper source. Meme image. It's pretty large.
What? Why I do the same things? So it's this is yeah. access meme image to URL, set meme image URL. Why still unknown errors? But why, when I do it, doesn't work with URL. Forgot the URL, guys. Oh, I'm such a troll.
I think for now I'm going to refresh, click, get a new meme image, and look at that. Now, I don't know immediately what this error is coming from. I think for now I'm going to ignore it, and we'll see if we can figure it out later down the road. Awesome work. Now, this is just the beginning. We have a lot left to learn about state, but don't let that be daunting. It's going to be really fun. So when you're ready, let's keep pushing forward.
Right, guys, I'm going to hop off for this afternoon. Gotta grab something to eat. Do a little bit more works.